All right, you got a hand for us? This is in
Quite
Sweden, right?
Yeah, it's an online cash game in Sweden.
Online cat. By the way, are you guys still doing that herd immunity thing?
The what?
Herd immunity.
I have no clue what that is actually.
This is not a poker term. Your response to coronavirus being let everybody just go out
Oh,
in
yo,
public.
yeah, yeah,
Herd
yeah.
immunity.
Yeah. I mean, like you can debate on how Sweden handles the situation. Definitely, yeah.
Is that what your policy is though?
Uh, well, it's very split about like the whole Corona thing. It's a bit shit.
It's a bit shit. Well, that sums it up here too. All right, so online cash game in Sweden. Yep.
Do you want me to take it in like Swedish crowns or like just turn it into dollars or whatever works fine for you, man?
How much is a Swedish krone to a dollar? Just out of curiosity.
Basically 1 to 8 or so, like 8 of $1 basically.
Okay.
Or like
Okay.
a 9.
Okay. Well,
But you
so what's the game size here in krones?
so 1 2 crowns.
1 2
So it's a very
krones. So it's a small
yeah,
game.
very
Okay.
small.
Okay. 1 2
Yeah,
krones.
micro
And how
basically.
deep are you in krones?
I'm playing 130 big blinds, so 260.
All right. We'll just pretend that it's like dollars, even though it's krones, right? Because I mean, it's
Yeah,
online,
yeah.
so it's small, but that's going to be the
Two,
equivalent,
yeah,
right? So okay. So 260 effective. Okay.
yeah, 260 effective.
Yep.
And I have ace of hearts and jack of diamonds on, and I'm on the button.
Okay.
No, I'm on the small blind.
Oh, okay.
So it's a six-handed table, and everyone is kind of new to the table. Like I have no info on the villain
Mm-hmm.
and other players, and it folds to the button,
Mm-hmm.
which is the main villain in the hand,
Mm-hmm.
and he opens to 6 crowns.
Okay, so he makes
So
it 3x.
That's standard open.
Yeah.
Yeah, standard open.
Uh-huh.
And I choose to free bet in the small blind to 20.
Okay. Seems like that's pretty good. Want to drive the big blind out of there. So folds the button, makes it 6. You make
And
it
I
20
should
from
have
small
the best
blind.
hand most of the time. So
Okay.
and villain calls, so we heads up to the flop after the big blind folds.
So button calls. So you're like at 43, something like that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I have 42.
Okay.
So the flop comes ace of diamonds, queen of hearts, and 4 of spades.
Ace of diamonds, queen of hearts, 4 of spades. Okay.
So I have top pair and backdoor straight draw.
Right. Well, yeah, backdoor straight draw with the jack. Okay. But I mean, you're going to be fair to have a pretty good hand here. I would say that you probably, you definitely have a range advantage in the sense that when you take a look, even from a fundamental perspective, of the button opening 40 or 50% of hands. Now, obviously, they're going to defend with less than that, but they're still defending at a frequency to just over a 3x raise. So, if they're defending, if the math is that they're defending, say, like 30 or 40% of their opening range, they're going to end up with a lot of hands here, like overall,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I would say like they never flat queens plus at
Okay.
poker pairs.
They're going to 4-bet it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like 100% in these games.
In these games. Okay. So they don't have aces and queens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically say I would almost never put them on queens or aces.
Okay.
So I go ahead and bet like half pot 22.
So again, this, I'll say this again, and I mentioned this, I'm looking at my phone, I mentioned this in my podcast last week, but I still haven't had a chance to use it yet. But there's an app, maybe someone in the live chat can speak to this, but there's an app called Solver Plus, which is new to the App Store. And this is really where I think when people are talking about like RTA types of things, which stands for, real-time assistance, I really do think that this is where poker is really going to as computing power just like moves up more. This is Poker Solver Plus GT GTO post flop lookup assistant. Like if it gets to a point where an app is accurate, where you can just basically plug in a flop almost like in real time, you can learn from that. I don't think it's necessarily good for poker, but part of the problem with using solvers and stuff was that they take too long and you have to be quite skilled to use them. But if you use like a service where they already have all the solutions basically laid out because they've run all these sims beforehand and they're just looking at like flops, you can quickly learn what your sizing is supposed to be in an optimal type of setting on a board like this. For me, it's something that I want to learn. I don't know off the top of my head, but I keep coming back to it. I'm like, I wonder what the solver would say here for this type of sizing. I would infer that because you've got a huge range advantage that you could probably bet on the larger side on a board like this. That, of course, will assume, though, that your opponent would know this and has to actually call down lighter. Because what is one of the best hands they're going to end up with here? I mean, maybe it might be ace, queen, or pocket fours as the very best, but they're going to have suited aces and things like that. So you bet 22. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and villain calls, no big deal really.
Okay.
And then, so we're facing the turn with 86 in the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And the turn is quite interesting in my opinion. It's the 10 of hearts.
10 of hearts, okay.
So since like he could have like ace 10 definitely and like queen 10
mm-hmm.
and maybe even some king jack suited, I decide and I think like since he called the flop bet and I free bet him pre,
mm-hmm.
which would mean that I probably can't take free streets of value with this hand at this point.
Yeah, I would think that a 10 would be highly reflective here of a check. I think that, if it was a brick card, if it was like a deuce, 3, 4, you could continue betting, but I like a check here.
Yeah. So I just like you said, I go ahead and check.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't want to get blown off my equity either. If I bet and he go ahead and raise, I could get put in an awkward spot, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So villain bets quite small actually, like 30 crowns into 86.
Okay. Well, if you listen to that the last couple calls when I was talking about this this is a hard defense for you when people use sizing here with bluffs, with protectionish types of bets, with thick value. This board's a little bit different because there's a lot of hands that probably don't need really protection. Different from that other hand with the monotone board, which obviously did. So, I mean, I think that you have a standard call here, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, actually. I went ahead and called, and we head to the river.
So 146 to the river, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So the interesting with the river is that it comes the 3 of heart that brings the backdoor flush draw there.
Okay, so just as a review for the people who might be listening to this in the podcast, 260 effective, 1-2, folds the button. This is online. Is this played like on like Poker Stars or something, by the way?
It's a Swedish client called Swedish Gaming, basically.
It's only open to Swedes?
Yeah.
Oh, so interesting.
It's quite aggro, game, actually.
Quite aggro. Those Scandinavian aggro players.
Depends. I mean, like it's all kinds of players, but it's usually a softer felt than at
than the general pool. Yeah, that makes sense. So, anyways, gets folded to the button, who makes it 6. Small blind 3 bets to 20. Button calls. Heroes in the small blind with Ace of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds. Pot 42. Ace of Diamonds, Queen of Hearts, 4 spades. Hero bets 22. We talked about how you might actually be able to go a little bit larger than that, but okay. Villain 1 calls. Pot to 86. Turn to 10 of hearts, ace, queen, 4, 10, hero checks, button bets 30, which is about, 1/3 the size of the pot, just a little bit more than that. Hero calls. Pot is now 146. The river is the 3 of hearts. And according to my math here, it looks like you've got maybe 190 or something, 180 or 190 left in your stack, something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the river's the 3 of hearts. And you've got the ace of hearts. I can maybe see where this is going.
Yeah, and also I have the jack, so I basically block king jack as well for like the turn straight.
And
in this scenario, since like I'm the only one who can have aces, and I am the only one who can have queens, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have the nut flush with like check calling, because I don't see how he has that many flush draws with me having the ace of hearts either.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to consist of.
Yeah,
the other interesting part of that too, when we're looking back at flop distribution in suits, just because that seems to go with this episode, is that, you know, the straight draws pair, like that king 10 straight draw on the flop, which might be like, well, at turn a heart draw, I can't have that because the 10 came in on the turn.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, king jack is a straight anyways. And, you know, it's like that 10 blocks a lot. So, I mean, you would be looking at like 4-5 of hearts or something, you know, 6-4 of hearts or something like that, which is pretty, you know, far out to lunch. I mean, yes, he probably should get here with 4-5, but that would be it, right? 4-5 of hearts.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You know, and then it's a question of like sizing on turn. So, okay, this is interesting, but you know what I was going to say about this before you tell me what we're going to do? This might be a textbook look. And again, I put out a YouTube video a few weeks ago about check raising the river and just talking about constructing like, hey, what's the theory behind check raising the river as a bluff? So when you think about check raising the river as a bluff, normally what you want to do is you want to take a hand that has some medium strength. And then through the action of the hand, you realize that it's probably a higher EV play to raise than to call. And the reason why you want to do it with a medium strength hand is because, and I think that your hand might fit into this, is because sometimes you have the best hand and it just goes check, and you win. Now, if you end up with a bluff on the river, like a busted bluff on the river, you can't really go for that line because if you check and the guy checks behind, you lose, right? You have no way of winning if it goes check. You want to take a hand that you could win at showdown value and then sometimes turn it into a bluff because you figure your hand is no good at the end, depending on what his sizing here is at the end. Because, you know, if he goes like, if you only have like a pot and a quarter left and he goes for like half the size of the pot here, you might not be able to get him to fold anything. Too good of odds, you know?
Yeah, he doesn't fold anything to that.
Right, odds. Right. So again, I'm just thinking about the theory. So what's your thinking here?
So instead of like checking and seeing like where basically bluff catching, and I don't think he shows up with that many bluffs here, which means that he would check down when I beat him, and then I would just have to pay him off, basically. Maybe sometimes.
Well, would you have to pay him off, though? I'm just asking. I mean, like, if you were to check and he, say, bet, you know, 100 to 125, if you thought that no worse hand was betting for value, and I think we can probably make that assumption, that, like, ace-9 is not going to bet here at the end, well, then he's either bluffing or he has the best hand, right?
Turn.
What's that?
I think I look quite strong on the turn when I call as well. Check call, then I must have something for showdown.
Sure. So what are you thinking about doing here?
Do that with a bluff. So I move in actually for 188 into the 146.
You move all in.
Yeah, I rip it. But
I got to tell you, what's your name? Isak, right? Isak?
Yeah.
I think that your hand is too strong to do this with as a single action in a late position versus blind 3-bet. I just think it has too much value to just suddenly basically risk your entire stack to turn this hand into a bluff. What do you think that you're going to get? Obviously, this is a bluff. What do you think you're going to get better to fold?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, since I'm the only one who can have, like, aces, queens, I think I have more king jack in my range than he has, since I have a jack, and, like, he would only maybe call the free bet with king jack suited as well. I can free bet with king jack off as well from the small blind, in my opinion.
I will actually tell you that I'm actually, I think it's one of the cusp hands, but it wouldn't surprise me if king jack is a defend here to your sizing, button versus small blind at this time. It's toward the bottom, but
yeah,
it's probably pretty close. It's probably pretty close.
Yeah,
but but again, in order for this to be the best play, what hands do you think you're getting to fold here that are better than your hands?
I mean, like, if he has something like turned queen 10, or like maybe even ace 10, what of my one of my value hands does queen 10 or ace 10 beat, or like maybe an ace king, because sometimes people just flat with ace king here.
Yeah, but even if that was the case, and I'm not even sure it is, but let's just assume that it is. And again, this is one where you could go back to even just simple Flopzilla. You don't have to go to a solver, but I don't know if you know what Flopzilla is. Just looking at certain hands.
I've been doing a lot of Flopzilla.
I mean, I would even say like, even if he has queen 10 and ace 10, he's going to fold there. Is that it doesn't seem to me on the surface that this play to get ace 10 or queen 10 to fold might even show a profit if you're risking your entire stack, because it's such a small portion of his range, of his total distribution of hands, that it still might even be negative EV the times that you're wrong and he has a thick nut hand where he's going to call. And that's my initial thinking here. You'd have to sort of look at the combos. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, there's 3 combos of queen 10 suited, right? Because the queen of hearts and the 10 of hearts are out there. So that's 3 hands. And then you've got ace 10. Say he doesn't call with ace 10 off. So now you've got the ace of hearts, the ace of diamonds is out there. There's only like, I mean, you're looking at 2 combos of ace 10 suited and 2 combos of queen, or 3 combos of queen 10. So like
6 combos of ace king as well, right? 6 combos, right? Or is it?
Of ace king?
If I block an ace,
You're afraid that he has ace king.
I mean, like I can get the ace king to fold there, maybe.
Yeah, but you just said that like guaranteed queens would be 4-bet. Wouldn't ace king be 4-bet pre?
Yeah, queen, kings, aces. I was thinking.
Not ace king. You don't think the button would 4-bet ace king pre?
I mean, like it happens, but I mean, like in these games, like when they can get out flopped with like kings or queens, they would more likely to 4-bet in these games.
Let's give this guy a very, very liberal, say 8 combos of those hands. Ace, queen 10, ace 10, some ace king. When you jam here, let's say he folds, I don't know, 70% of the time of those 8 combos, or a little more, 75% of the time, right? So now you're left with, he's calling with 2 combos anyway. So now you're like, well, targeting 6 combos of the 8, does that make this bet worth it to get those hands to fold where, like I said, the other distribution of hands where you're wrong that don't fold, it just doesn't, it seems like it's a lot here. What ended up happening? Yeah. So you moved in.
So I move in,
uh-huh.
And he made a monster fold actually. So I would never bet. I would never do this if I saw his hand. He actually folded pocket queens here.
Pocket queens?
Yeah.
What? Oh
Which
my
is
God.
crazy.
What's going on here today? I don't think you should ever fold that hand. But
like, if I put him on like 10s or queens as well, I would never do this. I don't expect.
So if you knew what he had, you wouldn't have done this. Is what you're saying?
No, that would be suicide.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting spot from your opponent's perspective when we talk about MDF, which is minimum defense frequency. And I don't know how long you've been playing for, Isak, but minimum defense frequency here. Even if we just round the pot off at like 150, and let's say, what did we say? You had like 190 or so left, or we can even say 200. You're betting 1 1/4 pot size basically at the end. So even though he's getting pot odds, you are risking
getting almost 2-1.
Well, that's the pot odds, but you're risking more than the size of the pot. So he needs to call with. So if you were betting the pot, he needs to call with 50% of the hands that he arrives with. If you're betting more than the pot, maybe he needs to call with like 42% of the hands that he arrives with. Now, is pocket queens going to be the best hand that he arrives with here at the end, the way that this played out? No, because he's going to have some flushes and some king jack, but it's still got to be in the top 42%, I would think. I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right? I just...
yeah. The only thing I'm wondering here really is like, if I check the river, like, I presume that's what you would maybe do, or... But if you check the river...
Yeah, I think the play is probably to check.
Do you always fold, or do you like find some calls depending on
I think
sizing,
it really depends on I think it really depends on the sizing, to be honest with you. I mean, with your hand, it would be more of a call. So your combination of ace jack is more of a call than ace jack with no heart, right? I mean, that's how we look at hand composition. You actually have a better hand to call with because there are less ace-x flushes that you lose to. So it's all of
exactly.
it's all of a combinations type of thing. But wow, that's really something. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.